So you're realistically looking at more like 12 years than just 10 right out of the gate. So be aware of that, be cognizant of that, because that's a big life commitment. To just be like, hey, I'm going to do this sight unseen pretty much for the next 10 years of my life. You don't know what you're signing up for, what unit you're going to go to, what airframe you're going to fly.
Welcome to the Branch Series. I'm your host, Christopher Hill. I started this series to help cadets and other aspiring Army officers choose their job, aka their Army branch. In this series, we will converse with other company-grade officers from various Army branches. They will share insights, personal experiences, successes, failures, their daily duties, and so much more.
The views expressed are those of the presenter and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Army, Department of Defense, or the U.S. government.
Hey leaders, in this episode, we are highlighting the Aviation Corps. My guest today is no stranger to this channel, First Lieutenant Handel. He is a stellar officer. I'm super stoked about having yet another conversation with him. We're going to talk about a typical day in the life of an aviation lieutenant. We're going to talk the rigorous training it takes to become an aviator. We're going to talk advice and tips to future aviators out there and cadets that may be listening or watching this episode. A lot of you have commented and said, please do an episode on the Aviation Corps. So here it is. Without further ado, help me welcome a fellow Liberty University alum, my ROTC classmate, an expert aviator, and you know what? Just an overall solid person. Please help me welcome First Lieutenant Handel. What's up, brother? Welcome back.
Hey, what is up? Long time no see.
I'm so tempted to just have a 30-minute catch-up session because it's been a while. There's so much that we need to catch up on. But how have you been?
I've been good. Enjoying life out here at JBLM. It's a great place to be. We love the Pacific Northwest, so cannot complain. It's no Germany, but it's nice. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. We're on a massive time difference. So thank you so much for blocking out some time.
Yeah, of course. Not a problem.
Everyone knows that you have one of the coolest jobs in the Army, right? Can you please just talk about one of the most rewarding parts of your job, or just maybe a cool experience that you had?
Yeah, one of the best parts about being in Army aviation, just as a whole, and especially being an aviator and flying, is the public outreach and community engagement opportunities that you get. So like last week, my unit had like 150 plus high schoolers come through and check out all the aircraft. We did a flyover at the Mariners game 2 or 3 weeks ago now for Military Appreciation Day. We did the opening day flyover last year. We've got some Seahawks players coming in to check out our facilities and see the aircraft and everything in a few weeks. Yeah, it's just really cool because everybody wants to stop and look at a helicopter when it flies by. Everybody's seen those memes, and they're true. Like, helicopters are really, really freaking cool, and they catch your eye, and we get to capitalize on that and get to spend a lot of time with the public, kind of showing them what we do and how we do it. And it's a very rewarding experience to kind of get that. It's something that I feel is pretty unique to the aviation community, unless you're like a tank driver or something, because we just have something that catches your eye. It's loud, it's in the sky. Mine happens to have guns on it because it's the best one. No big deal. Like, it's awesome. You can't really beat it.
What drew you to aviation?
With aviation, I really didn't think too much about it until I was in my junior year heading into advanced camp. My primary branch choice up until junior year had been infantry, pretty much straight through, and even during most of junior year. And then just in some conversations with some previous Liberty ROTC grads who had ended up going aviation, I was like, you know what, maybe I need to like take a look at this, just because of the opportunities and the skill set that you can develop by going aviation. And I mean, you're flying helicopters and it's cool. So I was like, I can do infantry, or I can go and hopefully fly Apaches and get to, be guns, but in the sky, which would be awesome. So the initial draw definitely started in junior year, just through conversations with other people. I wasn't an aerospace science major or airfield manager, nothing like that at Liberty. I wasn't in the aeronautics program. I was poli-sci, and ended up wanting to fly. So, it works out that way sometimes. So,
What is your airframe?
yes. So I fly the H-64, the Apache. Go guns. It's the best helicopter in the Army. Don't listen to what anybody else says. Go guns. We love them.
I know you can't lay out everything, but let's start with the SIFT test. I think that's the first place that you got to start. So can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so the SIFT is a multi-section exam that you'll take. It's composed of a reading type test, and it's all written in the Army writing style. And then there's like spatial orientation, where you're essentially looking at pictures from the view of what it would look like in the cockpit and trying to determine the attitude that the aircraft is in. There's a like spatial recognition, where you have to find hidden shapes in a big giant blob of colors. There's a math component, and then there's a general aviation knowledge and a mathematics component. Um, and you have to pass each section with the minimum score, and then you get a cumulative score at the end. I believe it's out of 80 points. And right now, the score, from what I'm being told, that they're seeing is the average acceptance score into aviation is around a 56, I believe, is what most people are getting, maybe a little bit higher, 58. All you have to do is pass. The minimum score is a 40. All you have to do is pass. They don't look at your score as part of the OML, but they do track the median average score of the candidates for aviation that are accepted. I got a 46. I did not do great on it. One more thing too on the SIFT, to shout out another YouTube channel that was super helpful, and actually one of my IPs in flight school runs the channel. Helicopter minutes in 11 minutes, or helicopter lessons in 11 minutes or less. If you are interested in going aviation, that's a great place to start to kind of get your Army aircraft and your aerodynamics knowledge for the SIFT. And there's a lot of good study guides out there as well for it, essentially like SIFT for dummies, which will be helpful. For Bullock, it's really short. Aviation Bullock is, I think, 3 weeks long. You kind of just do a down and dirty crash course on maintenance programs, the basic officer stuff, Sharp, EO, OERs, stuff like that. And then you go into combat vehicle identification tests. That's a big one that can hem a lot of people up. Make sure you study for that when you get there. And then it's really just a lot of class time. You're doing a lot of just sitting in front of your computer, PowerPoints, but it goes by quick. You'll take the ACFT, you'll do the 4-mile ruck, and it flies by. It's not difficult compared to a lot of the other things that you'll have to do while you're at Fort Novosel. It's a good time, and it's where you're going to kind of meet the preponderance of your friend group. At least in my case, the guys and gals that you go through Bullock with will, generally speaking, be the same people that you're at least going through the Common Core phase of flight school with, and probably SERE as well. Just kind of depends on if you're guard, you'll get accelerated a little bit. If you're active duty, you'll generally be with the same people, or very close to the same people all the way through flight school. Guard gets accelerated a little bit because they're on state funds, and so they have to go through a little bit quicker. So they'll go right from Bullock straight into SERE, straight into Common Core, straight into advanced airframe. They don't have a lot of holdover periods. If you're active duty, you can expect to have some pretty long hold periods, depending on when you arrive to Fort Novosel. If you arrive after the West Point cadets, you're going to be on a long hold, because the preponderance of West Point cadets all arrive at the same time and get plugged in right away. And if you arrive before the West Point cadets, I arrived before West Point, and so my longest hold that I had while I was there was 3 weeks in between SERE and starting Common Core. Um, After that, I only had a week or so holds between all the phases. So it just kind of depends on when you arrive. I know people that waited, they got there in December, January after the West Point cadets, and they didn't start um, actual Common Core until May or June of the next year. You'll have some extended holds depending on your arrival time and the way that the classes are shaping up. It's never the same. Bullock is always the same. Bullock will always be 3 weeks. You will always go right into Bullock after you arrive. After that, all bets are kind of off on when your next thing is going to start, just because there's a lot of moving pieces in flight school, a lot. And there's so many things that can slow the process down or speed the process up that are outside of your control. So do not be discouraged if you end up sitting around for like 3 months before you go do the next thing. It happens.
What does a typical day in the life of an aviation lieutenant look like?
Yeah. So at flight school, it's very you're essentially on a week by week schedule. So especially when you're in Common Core or in your advanced airframe, I can't speak too much to the schedules of the Blackhawk and Chinook students, but for the Apaches and for Common Core in general, you start on AM or PM shift, and you'll be on that for a week, and then the next week it'll rotate. So if you're on AMs, you'll fly in the morning and you'll go to academics in the afternoon. So your day will normally start at around 4 in the morning or so. And then if you're on AMs, 4 in the morning, and then you'll be done with academics by normally 1500 or so, um, 3 in the afternoon. And then if you're on PMs, you'll start academics at around 7 o'clock in the morning, and you'll be done flying by 5 or so in the evening. Just kind of depends. Um, and you'll do that for the entirety pretty much of Common Core until you get to nights. Once you get to instruments and you're in the simulator, those sim periods can go until 11 o'clock at night, just depending on how they have to stagger everything. So there's a lot of schedule change throughout flight school. You're not going to be on a very consistent sleep schedule apart from a week-long sleep schedule, and then the next week your sleep schedule will entirely change. And then you'll go into nights in both Common Core and Advanced Airframe, and then you won't be done flying until almost 1 in the morning. Um, and then again, your sleep schedule is just going to go out the window. Um, and you'll be on academics the whole time too, pretty much. So it's a lot. You have to study. Um, you have to make sure you're getting good sleep. And you also want to have fun with it, because flight school is probably the funnest point in your aviation career, where you're flying the most, especially as an LT. You're going to be flying the most at flight school. Get to be in the aircraft every day, which is a blessing that should not be taken for granted. And you'll be with the same people, a very small group of people that hopefully you enjoy being around, because you are with them day in and day out. I saw the same, like my stick buddy, I love him to death. I saw his face every single morning. First face I'd wake up and see. I'd get in my car, drive to flight line, and there's Stewie. And so you
Shout
got
out
to
to
make sure that
Stewie.
you got to make sure that you love your stick buddy, because if you don't, it's going to be a long road. So make sure you stay on good terms.
You all do a water simulation, like a crash water simulation, and you have to survive that.
Yeah. So SERE you'll do in between Bullock and starting Common Core. Generally speaking, during COVID, they changed that up, and a lot of guys ended up graduating flight school without doing SERE, and then having to come back once they reopened SERE. But now you do it in between Bullock and Common Core, and there is no dunker at all in flight school. They've changed that requirement. They used to do dunker with every class. Every class had to go through dunker as part of their training in their advanced airframe course. I believe it was advanced airframe, but they no longer do that at Fort Novacell. So you will only do Dunker if you get sent to a unit that does a lot of overwater flying. So like JBLM, we do Dunker here. You will do it at Hawaii. You might you might do it at like maybe Fort Cavazos. I don't know where else there. Korea, you will do Dunker. It just kind of depends. If you're at Campbell or Bragg, you're probably not going to be doing Dunker, just because you're not really an overwater uh, unit. So it just depends on where you get stationed if you get the opportunity to do Dunker.
So you mentioned that you're at JBLM right now. What is a
Mhm,
typical day like at your this is your first unit, right? So what is a
mhm.
typical day like as an aviator at your first unit?
So I got here and got put into the S3 shop. I have not taken a platoon yet. So my day looks very different from the days of the platoon leaders that are actually in the line companies. My days consist of showing up to work and making plans, sending emails, flying when I can, when the schedule works out, just doing a lot of the admin officer type stuff, um, writing con ops, op boards, and then just trying to manage everything that's going on training wise for HHC. Like I am managing a Dunker trip right now, sending aviators to the Dunker training at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. Um, it's a lot more of the officer type stuff that you're going to do. And then when you're a PL, obviously you're still doing the officer type stuff, but in that platoon leader role. So you're flying more, you're much more focused on aircraft proficiency and training the tactical tasks with your company to conduct missions and be proficient at those tasks. So it's a lot more flying. It's much more into the aircraft maintenance world, ground maintenance as well when you're a platoon leader. So the day in the life of a flight line PL, they normally start their days, they do PT. Depending on your unit, you may not have PT. Aviation is weird like that, but most places, from what I'm hearing, everybody's doing PT now. So that's a misconception. If you've been told that aviators don't PT, we PT. But you'll do PT. They have the PC meeting, which is production control, going over which aircraft need which services, which ones are on the schedule for that day to fly. You'll be with the maintenance test pilots going through what they're going to be doing. If you're already a PI, RL progressed all the way from RL3 to RL1, you can be on the maintenance PI list where you're just kind of sitting around waiting for an MTP to call and say, hey, I have to go do this test on this aircraft. I need a PI that wants, 30 minutes of flight time. Come hop in. So it's a much more uh, day by day, everything's going to change type role than where I'm at. I know my schedule and my tasks, they stay roughly the same because I'm an S3. So I can have a very nice agenda. Obviously, there's always a surprise. There's always a fire to put out. But for the most part, my day is very much cut and dry. I know exactly what I'm going to go in and do that day. Once you're into that flight line PL, at least from what I've seen, you're much more kind of on your toes. Just whatever comes down the chute, that's what you're doing that day. So it's exciting. It's fun stuff.
So what aspects you talk about being in the S3? Is that something that you thought that you would be doing when you chose aviation? Or did you think that you would be doing something else? Let's get into it.
So I was warned by my warrant officer IPs in flight school that is what ultimately being an aviation officer on the commission side devolves into. There you hit a point as a commissioned officer where you're going to be flying less and planning more and doing the admin tasks, doing the officer stuff because that's what you were commissioned to do. Someone has to do that. You're a pilot first. That is your primary duty. They always remind us of that. We are a pilot first, but at the end of the day, we also have to run the house and meet the commander's requirements, the medal, the annual training guidance, like all that stuff still has to happen. So all the LTs and the captains, we can't just be flying all the time and solely focused on getting our hours and meeting our own personal requirements in the aircraft, because then nothing would get done. And so I definitely wasn't anticipating going straight into the S3 shop coming out of flight school. I thought I would go right into a line company spot. But that's not the way it shook out, and it just kind of depends on the unit that you go to. Every unit is different. Some like to put you right into that PL spot. Some like to put you into the S3 shop or the S4 shop or wherever they need you on the staff side, so you can get some reps under your belt and get a little bit of experience, get your feet wet in big Army, because flight school is not big Army. It's just not. You talk about low oversight, like you do not PT at all during flight school unless you're in Bullock or on hold. Once you start flying at Fort Novosel, you are on your own entirely. As long as you show up to class and to flight line, the rest of your time is yours. You don't have, no one's making you study. No one is making you PT or workout. No one cares. Like very, very, very low oversight. I shouldn't say no one cares, but they have too much going on to try and keep track of you and monitor you and what you're doing. So it's very much a self-starting type thing. And that definitely does tend to happen as well. Once you get to your unit, just depending on where you go, you have to kind of just be a self-starter, because there's too much going on for you to have your handheld all the way through RL progression and getting your job done. It's big boy time, big girl time. Like it's out of the frying pan into the fire. You're not done. It's not a break, and you have to be ready for whatever role they go and put you into. One big thing that I wish I'd done more of while I was at flight school was stayed up on my Army proficiency stuff, because I was so focused on maintaining my aircraft proficiency and being a good pilot and knowing the systems as best as I could, and passing my exams and passing my check rides, that you get back into the real world and you get to force com and you show up to your unit and they're like, hey, you're in this free shop. I need you to, like, the first thing that I did, like I'd been here for like maybe a month and I was running a M17 range and a Mark 19 range. I'd never seen a Mark 19 in my life. And it's like, hey, I need you to run this range. I need a con op. I need you to figure out who's going to do what. I need you to run PMI on the Mark 19. You're like, I've never seen one. And that's what's nice about having the warrants, because they are subject matter experts on the aircraft, but the vast majority of them were also prior enlisted and very squared away prior enlisted. They know what they're doing. So I reached out into that warrant officer communication chain and was like, hey, can anybody come help me out with running a PMI in the Mark 19? And sure enough, 3 hands got raised like, hey, I can come help. Hey, I can come help. And they're all prior infantrymen with combat deployments and experience, and they know exactly what they're doing. They show up and they're there and they're helping you out, which is one of the best parts about having so many warrants around, because they come from vast different previous career fields, both in and out of the Army. And then they can bring that experience and help you as a junior officer to kind of meet commander's intent, even if it's not in the aircraft, which is really cool to see. So
don't forget to subscribe to this channel and interact with the community of leaders that we're building right here on this channel. All right, let's get right back to the video. I want to pause on something that you brought up. You asked for help. Let's talk about pride for a second, because if you go in with that cocky mentality, then people will watch you fall flat on your face. But if you go in, put pride aside, the great book says pride comes before the fall. And it also says that grace is given to the humble. So if you are just humble, you will find that you have grace amongst your peers, your superiors, subordinates alike, and you will achieve more just by being as humble as Hayden just mentioned. Do you ever have that pressure of, man, I have to know?
Oh yeah. You'll get asked to do things with the expectation that you are just ready to do it. Someone's going to put something on your desk, say, hey, I need this done by Wednesday, and they're going to give you very little guidance on what they're looking for. They're just going to kind of
Yeah.
tell you what they want in a general term and be like, I need this, let's get it done. And you're like, I've never seen this in my life. So the biggest thing that you can do with that, you don't want to just be, you want to ask for help, but you don't just want to go running to someone, be like, hey, I need to do this, can you help me, without doing any of the groundwork yourself. So make sure that you
Right.
do the legwork on your end and get into the doctrine, or whatever you need to get into. Look at the previous, as an LT, you are using the previous product. You are digging through the shared drive, the Teams folders. You're finding what the last guy did. You're taking that and you're trying to make it better.
Yes.
So you're going to copy and paste. You're going to plagiarize out of somebody else's work, and then you're going to say, "Hey, here's what they did. Let's find the AARs. Let's see how everybody felt about this. Somebody that was here for this training that participated. Let's get their feedback, and then let's make it better." And that's when you then go and ask for help. You say, hey, I've already got this developed. I've already planned this out. This is scheduled. This is reserved. Now I need your help to really kind of take this to the next level and get it to the place where it needs to be great training, not just the same that we did last year. And that's where that help kind of comes in. Because as a junior officer, like, you'll know the basics coming in and you'll get more proficient as you go, but you can't beat the experience of someone who has, 10 plus years in service. You know what I mean? It just, they've gone through the same training 3 times now. They know the ins and the outs of it. But you also don't want to go to them empty handed and be like, hey, I need to do this. And then you just kind of essentially dump it off on them to do all the heavy lifting. It definitely makes sure that you're taking the lion's share of the work and then coming to them for that, like, extra pizzazz, the finishing touches, to really kind of put it over the top. Um, Definitely do the leg work yourself, because otherwise you're just that officer that kind of sits behind their desk and no one really knows why they're there. And you don't want to be that guy. That doesn't do anybody. It's a disservice to you. It's a disservice to your soldiers and to your peers, and it just makes everybody's life more difficult than it needs to be. So be the team player, come prepared, and if you don't know what you're doing, just say that. It's bad news doesn't get better with time. So if you don't know what you're doing, go ask for that clarification and that guidance early on in the process. Don't wait until you're a week out and be like, hey, so surprise, I actually don't know what this thing is. Can I? Because by then it's too late. You want to have that conversation T+8, not T+1. So that would be my advice there.
Hayden, what advice would you have for cadets or soldiers interested in pursuing a career in aviation?
I would say definitely look long and hard at the 10-year ADSO. Um, on the commission side, that doesn't start. Actually, I believe it's both warrants and for the commission guys. It doesn't start until after flight school. So you'll do a year and a half to 2 years of flight school, and then that ADSO will kick in. So you're realistically looking at more like 12 years, than just 10 right out of the gate. So be aware of that, be cognizant of that, because that's a big life commitment. To just be like, hey, I'm going to do this sight unseen pretty much for the next 10 years of my life. You don't know what you're signing up for, what unit you're going to go to, what airframe you're going to fly, unless you're guard. It's a big leap of faith into the unknown there on that. So make sure that you are prepared and committed, to maybe not get your first choice of airframe. Like if you go into flight school wanting Chinooks, Chinooks are hard to get. Most classes, sometimes not, but most classes, Chinooks are just hard to get. Apaches, some classes are really hard to get. Blackhawks are pretty much always open. There's always spots for Blackhawks, but it just depends on what you want to fly. You're not going to know that until you're done with Common Core. You won't find that out until you get your order of merit list with your bullet score and your Common Core score combined. So there's a good chance that you're not going to get the aircraft that you want to fly, that drew you to Army Aviation in the first place. So you're signing up for maybe 10 years of not the exact job that you necessarily wanted. So be aware of that. Be aware of just the op tempo, that comes with aviation, especially depending on where you're stationed. There's going to be a lot of rotations. I have buddies all over all over the world right now. And we rotate a lot out of JDLM. You're busy because there's only so many Army aircraft that can go so many places at one time. And so everybody is always on the move. And it's an ever changing world. And so the rotations are not going to stop. You will always be incredibly busy, but it's fun work because you get to fly. Like that's kind of the seller. You get to fly. On the commissioned officer side, like I said earlier, you're not going to fly as much. That's just the truth of the matter. Short of an actual combat deployment, you're just not going to fly as much. Your warrant officers will outstrip you in hours pretty much immediately after getting to the unit. They are the subject matter experts. They are the ones who are going to fly and need to fly because that's their job. As an officer, you're wearing dual hats. You're a pilot first, that's your primary duty, but you are also running the house. And so you kind of have to wear both of those hats and take them on and off and on and off a lot. So be prepared to do that. I would not change anything on my career path. I love aviation, but it definitely is not a decision that you should make lightly with that ADSO in mind. Make sure that you take your health seriously. It's very, very easy to get an injury playing intramural sports in college that can absolutely derail you from being able to commission into aviation. Just be very careful. Have fun. I played a lot of intramural and club sports at school, and I was blessed to stay healthy throughout that entire time. But just be cognizant of the fact that your health can be the biggest detractor during your aviation career, because if you go on a downslip, that you're not flying, it's eating away your time that you could be in the cockpit. Um, yeah, it's definitely a commitment to decide to go into this branch and this job, but it is one that I would recommend taking. If you want to fly and you want to fly Army, then there is no reason to not. You know what I mean? It's really really fun, and nothing beats pulling pitch on that aircraft and zooming around at really slow speeds compared to jets. But they can't fly backwards and they can't hover, so we'll always have that on them.
Nice. So, what career opportunities are available in the aviation branch?
There's a lot. It really depends on what you want to go into. On the warrant officer side of the house, you will track. You can track maintenance test pilot. You can track IP. You can track AMSO, and then you can do that as well as a commissioned officer. You can go to maintenance test pilot school. That's the most common for officers, just because we are uh, the primary managers of the maintenance program and making sure that the aircraft are skyworthy. So MTP is big for officers. IP is very useful if you are an officer and you're able to get a slot in the instructor pilot course. That is useful to you, from at least what I've been told, but it is less common. So MTP seems to be the track that we almost always end up getting put into, but IP is available. One thing that you can do later on down the line, especially if you go that MTP route, is you can become an experimental test pilot, and do a lot of work on improving the helicopters and the new variants that are coming out as part of some of the future programs that the Army has going. So that's cool. You can end up going to the production factories for the Chinook and the Apache and the Black Hawk, like Philly, Mesa. I think New Mexico has some, and doing a lot of work down there on quality control and stuff. There's a lot of different places that you can go. I know that there's opportunities at Boeing that you can go into as an Army officer that's in aviation. There's all kinds of stuff that you can kind of get yourself into. The possibilities are really kind of limitless. It just depends on how much you want to fly. If you want to fly more, some of those opportunities maybe aren't for you. If you don't mind cutting back on your flying hours and kind of getting into more of that admin side of making stuff happen and getting behind the curtain of the aircraft, then there's a lot more on that side as well. So it just kind of depends on where you want to go. You can go anywhere. It just comes down to what you want to do in your career. So
Looking back, and I ask everyone that has come on this same question. Looking back, if you could do it all over again, is there anything that you would change? Would you consider any other branches, or do you like where you're at?
I like where I'm at. I like where I'm at. Um, it definitely it has its ups and downs for sure. You will go, at least in the position that I'm in right now, you will go a lot of time not flying. You will spend way more hours in front of your computer and in briefings and in meetings than you will in the cockpit. But that's just kind of the nature of the job, and it ebbs and flows. So you will eventually take a platoon and fly more, and you'll eventually come out of that platoon and be back behind a desk. And then you'll take company command and you'll fly more, and then you'll be a major and you'll go not fly hardly at all. And then you'll be, if you're lucky, you'll pick up that lieutenant colonel, lieutenant commander spot, and you will fly way more. You'll get a ton of hours there. So it ebbs and flows. The warrant side is definitely much more consistent on the flying hours. The commission side is less so, but I would not change a single thing, especially not the experience of flight school. The experience of flight school is, in my opinion, worth every bit of the 10 years. I made some of the best friends I've ever made in my life at flight school, and some of the best memories. And yeah, would not go back and change a single thing, solely based off of my experience at Fort Novosel, because it was that incredible being able to go through Army flight school and be with those people, and even the people that I'm with at my unit. The individuals that you will meet in aviation are truly incredible, top to bottom, from your most junior enlisted, like 15 papas, to your sergeant major in your battalion. Like, you're going to meet some incredible folks that have everyone has a different story, and a story that's worth hearing. You can't beat it. You really can't. Would not change a thing.
Well, thanks so much, Hayden, for coming on and sharing your story, your wisdom, and your experience with us. I truly believe that you just added value to so many out there. The floor is yours. Any parting words of wisdom, encouragement? How can we keep up with you? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I wish all of you guys, all you cadets that may be watching this, the best of luck as you finish out your ROTC careers, and just stay humble, work hard, keep your head down, do the right thing. That is never done wrong by anybody. Just be consistent in who you are. And yeah, I don't have much more than that. The Army journey is a long one, especially in aviation. It's a big sign on. So be ready to buckle in for the long haul, for the ups and the downs, and to have a really great time at the end of the day. I don't think anybody walks out of their career in Army aviation and says, man, I don't know if that was worth it. I have not heard that from anyone yet. So if you're on the fence, fly Army. That's what I would say.
Well said. Well, leaders, I really hope that you enjoyed that conversation that I had with my good friend Hayden. And as I mentioned, I hope that it added value to you on whatever journey you may be on, whether you're an enlisted soldier right now and you're about to do green to gold, or you've already been accepted and boots are about to hit the ground at your campus, or if you're on your way to Bullock and you're just tuning in because you're curious about what the heck life is going to be like, or what it could potentially be like. As always, do your homework, do your research. And if you found this video, this podcast, that means that you are doing the right thing. But don't stop here. Continue to talk to folks that are in the field, get more insight, just like you got in this episode. But hey, leaders are learners, so never stop learning, right? Make sure you hit that like button, you subscribe to this channel, you reach out and you show some love to our friend Hayden. This is his second or third time on the channel, and hopefully it's not his last. I'm going to put him on the spot here. Are you coming back to talk to us at any point?
Anytime. I'm an aviator. I love to talk about being a pilot. There's not a day that goes by that I don't tell at least one person, oh, I'm a pilot. You know, that's the standard behavior for us. So anytime anybody wants to talk about how I'm a pilot, I'm more than happy to oblige.
I feel like that's a great pickup line as well. But we're going to keep this thing rolling. We're going to keep this thing rolling. Leaders, keep leading, and I'll see you in the next video.